All right, well, welcome to Solar Oregon's Comparing Solar Quotes workshop. My name is Nicole, and I'm a program manager at Solar Oregon. And this is a reoccurring workshop to share about solar and storage and what elements you might see on a solar quote. We'll be going over the components in a system, elements in a quote, some other criteria you might want to take a look at when reviewing quotes and looking to find a contractor. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A session. So a little bit about Solar Oregon. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We are member-based and have been around since 1979. We do outreach, education, community events, and advocacy. We have this reoccurring workshop as well as a How to Go Solar and Storage workshop, which focuses more just on solar and storage. We also help with solarized campaigns in different communities and as well as have two flagship events each year. One is our Go Zero tour, which is actually coming up October 5th. So if you want to see some homes that have incorporated solar in Oregon, you can join that tour virtually or in person. We are member-based, and so you can become a member today. You get discounts to those flagship events like the Go Zero Tour and Solar Winery Tour, and be part of the work we do here at Solar Oregon. This workshop is supported by the Energy Trust of Oregon, which is an independent nonprofit that was established in 2002, and they provide resources to help enable customers of investor-owned utilities in our state to use energy efficiently and gain access to renewable energy. Please use the Q&A box for any of your questions. The chat will be where we post resources, and then Q&A is where we will be going to answer questions at the end of this. And then I'm also going to just run a couple polls just to learn a little bit more about where you're joining from today and what your familiarity is with solar incentives. And then we'll do one last poll at the end to see if this webinar helped your understanding of solar so that we can keep improving our education offerings for folks across the state. So I'll go ahead and start those polls right now. This last one is about incentive familiarity. Have you heard of the solar incentives before or solar within reach? We'll jump right in then to um, the basics of solar and storage and look at the components in a system. So this diagram here shows a basic grid-tied system. You can see the PV panel or photovoltaic panel there, and that is where your panel will collect energy from the sun. That'll be in DC current, and that type of electricity will then need to get converted to AC, which will be done in the inverter or microinverters. And then once it's converted, it'll flow to the electrical panels in your home. And then for a grid-tied system, you'll also have a special utility meter, bi-directional meter that will measure the flow of electricity out from your home and then also what you need to pull from the grid. So the goal with solar here is to match your system sizing to what your consumption is so that you can produce what you need on site. But because you are grid-tied, you can pull from the grid maybe when your production is low. We have net metering here in the state. And so this is a process that allows you to account for the energy you export so that you can gain credit for it. And here shows what it might look like for net metering in the summer and in the winter. So you can see those graphs. You're going to produce a lot more solar energy in the summer. So you'll have likely net metering credit earned, and it'll show up on your bill in the year-to-date banked generation measured in kilowatt hours. So this example is showing that the system produced more than what was consumed at the location. So there was an extra 327 kilowatt hours that were produced. And so that was added to the credit bank. And then in the winter months, you can pull from those credits when you need to draw from the grid if your production of solar is lower. And then if you're a Pacific Power or PGE customer, the net metering year runs from April 1st through the end of March. So that way you can build up more credits in those summer months that you can pull on in the winter months. And then anything that's not used at the end of March is donated to low income users. And then system requirements. So the biggest thing is matching your system to what you consume on site. And so that'll include a detailed talk with your contractor about previous energy bills. If you have anything you're looking to add to your system down the line, such as an EV charger, the average size for a solar system in Oregon is about 8 kilowatts. And for storage or home battery storage, it's about 13.5 kilowatt hours. And this just depends on what your system needs are. So some folks will just decide to go with solar, and some will do solar paired with storage. And this is good if you're looking to be able to bank energy that you can access if there's an outage. So there's several reasons the cost of your system can vary. So system size and components are going to impact the cost. When your contractor comes and assesses your site, which they'll probably do the first assessment using satellite software. And then if they come out to the site, they're going to want to check also the structural integrity of your roof and see if it needs any upgrades. If you have an older house, your electrical panel might need to be upgraded, so that's something to take into consideration. And then if you have a really steep roof or different roofing material, such as sometimes tile can be harder to install on, that can impact your cost as well. And then access to incentives is also a factor that can impact your out-of-pocket. And then system production is dependent on how much solar resource you can access. So having an array on the south facing roof is going to be usually the best. If you have shading from trees, installers may look at other roofs, but usually systems won't be installed on north facing roofs. And so when you are looking at that system design, you'll want to look at the watts in your system and calculate your cost per watt by dividing that by the total price. And then the elements in a quote to look out for. You're going to want to look at the equipment. You know, if you are doing solar paired storage, what type of home battery system is included? Is it quoted for 1 or 2 batteries? For folks that are looking to do more backup for longer periods of time, we see people using more than 1 battery. Because with just 1 battery, it can be hard to back up a large amount of your home for an extended period. A lot of folks will decide to back up like 1 particular room, the lights in that area, make sure they have like an outlet where they can plug in their laptop and cell phones, and then refrigerators are another big one. We'll delve a little bit deeper into equipment. So for add-ons, sometimes you can see things added such as like critter guards, or if you're looking at ground mounted solar, there might be different add-ons for that, or if you have a steep roof. Also, if you need to upgrade or add an additional electrical panel, that can impact the quote. Inverters can be either string inverters or microinverters. So this one in the photo here is showing microinverters, and those are usually connected to 1 to 3 panels. Both work here in the state. It's just going to depend on your system design, and they do have different costs depending on which inverters and brands you go with. So then again, the brands are going to matter. If you go with like multiple power walls from Tesla, that can impact your price. And then you want to be sure to look at the warranties that are included. For warranties, it's important to consider the length of coverage. Is it a contractor or manufacturer warranty? Most installers that are part of the Trade Ally network will have a 2-year system warranty at least that will cover like labor for repairs or defects in equipment, or have a contractor workmanship warranty that is around 10 years. So that's usually the length of coverage, and then some can extend longer than that. For example, if you're part of the Solar Within Reach program, that could have some extended warranties as part of that program. Payment structures can vary depending on how you're looking at paying for your system and what the payment period is like. So loans are an option here as well as leases. Power purchasing agreements are less common in Oregon. And then when considering these, you really want to, like, for example, for loans, see if there's any hidden fees, such as dealer fees, and how those will change over time. Some fees will have like certain rates for different payment periods. So make sure to like read the fine print and make sure you're prepared for that full payment of your system. So you can take that into account when making this financial decision. Incentives are greatly going to impact the cost for out of pocket. So incentives that you can get that will impact your out of pocket are going to be like energy trust incentives if you're in Pacific Power or PGE territories. And right now there is $1,000 incentive for solar for PGE and $1,200 incentive for Pacific Power. And now there is also a home battery storage incentive, and that is $500 per kilowatt hour, up to $6,000 for both PGE and Pacific Power. Some other utility areas will have different incentives they might have available, so you definitely want to check with your utility and also check with your contractors, because these incentives are what they would be applying for or helping you apply for upfront. And then Solar Within Reach is an income qualified incentive. And so you can find out more about that on that Energy Trust website that was part of the resources that were shared, that has different income qualifying levels. So for example, for a household of 4, if the gross income for that household is under $120,252, then that you would qualify. So it's good to check that to see if you can meet any of those income qualifying incentives. And so those are really going to be what's going to impact your out of pocket. Sometimes there's also other deals that the contractors might be running or promotions. So you want to keep that in mind and compare at least 3 quotes if you can. In the Portland area, it's a little bit easier to get quotes from 3 trade allies. And in rural parts of Oregon, it might be a little harder to reach that number, but 3 is definitely the recommended number of quotes to compare. And if you can't get that many, at least have 2 so you can see what contractor has the best option for you. And then something that you can apply for after you're out of pocket would be the federal solar investment tax credit. And so that's a 30% dollar for dollar tax credit. And so this would be taken out of the taxes that you owe. So you have to have tax liability in order to get this credit. And it can be claimed over a few years. So if you don't have enough tax liability in the first year, you can apply it to a few years. We are not tax professionals here at Solar Oregon. So we do recommend, asking your tax professional for assistance to make sure that you are applying for that correctly. A common misconception is that you can um, include re-roofing in this tax credit for solar, and that is false. So it only covers solar and home battery storage. So just important things to remember. And you would be applying for this when you do your taxes, and it would be less the taxes you owe. So some of the other credentials you want to think about are they part of the Trade Ally Network or some other organization of pre-vetted contractors? Do they have a good reputation? Do they have any other special credentialing? For example, if you're thinking about a Tesla roof, which has solar tiles, you would want to make sure you're working with a contractor who has experience installing those because the installation is a little different than regular panels. Testimonials are another good option. Like I said, you can ask your solar contractor for references, compare online reviews, um, looking at like what the company prioritizes, if they prioritize people over profits, if the company culture is something you believe in. So, and if they're local, maybe some folks want to focus on a local organization instead. And then years in business can be a big one. Um, if you want to work with somebody who has been around for a while and are hoping that they'll be around longer. That can be good if you're thinking about maintenance later for your system. So now we'll look at some example quotes. Basic information you're going to see on a quote is system details like the size and system production. System size will be measured in kilowatts. System production will be measured in kilowatt hours. And then what equipment is included. And this should also include like what brand of panels or inverters or batteries are part of your system. Contractors will also look at your previous energy bills to see what your consumption is. If you have something coming up that's going to greatly impact your energy consumption on site, if that's, new people moving in to your household or people moving out or adding that EV charger, you're going to want to share that with your contractor so that can be factored into the plan. System cost should be on there. The price per watt is an important one to look at. And then what incentives you have access to, as well as tax incentives for that federal tax credit. That is going to be something too you're going to want to run by your tax professional. And then financing, if you are financing the system, you want to make sure that's clearly outlined and ask any questions that you have about that. You want to do your homework on that to make sure that that pencils out for you. Some solar contractors have a third party that they partner with for financing. And then your local bank that you use might also have a loan program for solar and storage. So those are some good places to check. And then like here you can see the panels brand is listed. You'll have, information about system production. I know payback is a big topic that comes up a lot for folks, and that can just range depending on the cost of your system and if you decide to get a loan. So that's important to consider when you're trying to go solar. And then if you are getting that loan, you want to know what your payment is and that interest as well. So you can factor in the interest and your cost. And then the average annual production is going to be good to look at. And so those are some key things to keep in mind when you have a quote in hand. Energy Trust of Oregon has a good resource for trade ally contractors. So they are qualified contractors, pre-vetted, and they are approved to offer Energy Trust incentives. So if you are in PGE or Pacific Power territory, to get those incentives, you'll need to work with a trade ally, and then they will apply for that incentive on your behalf, and it'll impact your out-of-pocket cost. And then there's a solar bid tool that can help connect you. It's a form online. It takes about 3 to 5 minutes, and just ask some questions about what you're looking for so that they can match you to a contractor in your area. And that link is in the chat. Installation for your system usually is about 1 to 4 days. It could be closer to that 4 days if you're installing batteries or if you have a complex design. The contractors will help you with the Energy Trust incentives, the tax credit you have to apply for, and then permitting can vary. I know in Multnomah County, permitting can take a little longer. It has decreased in length of time recently, but it still can take some time to get those permits through. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then their contractor will manage the inspections and then also the interconnection of your system to the grid. Great. So now we're just going to move to Q&A.